Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create a unique pendant using polymer clay texture beads. Now, I have already shown how to create these in a previous tutorial that came out yesterday. If everything went correctly, there will be a link to that in the description below so that you can see how to create your own texture beads at home just using polymer clay. They're really easy, so I highly encourage going and checking that out. Also, if you don't want to use texture beads, feel free to use a texture mat. It will work just the same in today's video. But to start off with, I am going to be using white polymer clay. This is Prima and it has been rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine, or 2mm thick to be precise. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that and I am going to burnish it down onto my work surface so that it sticks, so that I can texture it with my texture beads. And you want to make sure that it's stuck down to the work surface, and then you also want to apply a layer of cornstarch to the surface of the clay so that it prevents your piece from sticking. And let me just grab a little bit more of that dust. I really want to make sure that it's coated. Also, this is the same process you would go through if you were going to be using a texture stamp. There we go, that should be enough. You could also use water as well if you would prefer that. Alright, and just dust that around. There we go. And the whole surface should be non-stick. Right, then you can use your texture beads. And I'm going to start off with the one that has little flowers on it. I'm going to take that and I am going to just roll that at random across the clay. And I encourage kind of creating a wiggly effect, just going backwards and forwards so that you get a kind of random pattern. Then once I've got about half the texture sheet covered, I will then go over to my other one and I am going to fill in most of the empty spaces using that. And don't worry about getting it perfect. This is a really free, loose, fun technique that doesn't require precision. You can even go back over the different textures. If you don't like a spot, you can go in and just press directly into one spot. Like that's what I'm doing right here. And yeah, just have some fun. Also, these are just two of the texture beads that could be made. You can have a variety of different types, so play around and see what you can come up with. But there, that is pretty much it. Let me just pick that up so that I can show you a little closer up how that looks. And there, hopefully the camera can pick up there how nice that texture is. It's quite deep as well. This would work very well for mica megane if you want a texture that works for that. But yeah, from there I am now going to cut it in half. Alright, and for that I'm going to use one of these 3D printed blade cutters. It's got quite a nice interesting squiggle. You could use a craft knife instead if you would prefer. But I'm going to be using this, and I'm going to just place that down on one half of my piece and press down like so. Lift up, and that part stuck a little bit, that's okay. There we go. Alright, now I'll put that to the side, and this part I think you have to choose which side you want to keep. This side I'm going to keep for the texture, and this side I'm going to lift up and we're going to do something cool with it. But for this one I am going to grab it and we're just going to gently highlight that texture. So let me grab that. Okay, and I'm going to highlight it with a number 16 mica powder, or essentially a mica powder that kind of looks like antique copper. Feel free to use any mica powder, pastels, or even paint that you want. I'm just going to take that, and I'm just going to gently apply that to the top of the texture like so. And I'm going to use my finger because I feel like I can get better control of where I am applying the powder that way. And I just want to highlight the top. I don't want to have too much powder on the piece. You can feel free to cover the whole thing in powder if that's what you would prefer. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to cover that like so. And then I will leave it and we can come back to it once I finish with the other pieces. But I want to make sure that I get in there and really highlight some of those other pieces down in the crevices, like so. So just spend your time doing that. And again, you can use any powder you want. And yeah. Alright. And once you've done that, just take that and put it to the side. That will get worked on later. And I'm just going to flip that piece of paper over and bring the other piece that I have to the side over here. And I'm going to be working with chalk pastels. Let me just bring that over so you can see the brand. Any chalk pastels will work. These are the ones that I'm going to be using today. Keep in mind you can use alcohol ink and mica powder and achieve basically the same effect. And from here I'm going to choose a couple of colours. Whichever colours you like, feel free to go with those. I'm going to be working in kind of a these darker denim colours with a little bit of grey and maybe a little bit of let me go for a little bit of the ecru colour. Alright, and I should probably echo the copper colour that I have as well. Now I'll put that to the side. And then you're going to take a blade, it can be a craft knife or a tissue blade, and you're going to scrape those pastels over the surface. And I'm going to start off with the colour that I want to be the most dominant, which will be this kind of denim colour. And I'm just going to scrape it, and I'm going to do it in little patches, trying to concentrate that colour where I want it to be. It's not going to be perfect because when you go to brush things around, the colour will move, but you can somewhat dictate where it's going to land based on what you do here. And you can scrape the colours on. If you were doing alcohol inks at this point, you would just be dripping the colours on and then blending that together. And if it was mica powders, you use the exact same process that I'm using right now. Alright, and that should just about do. I don't want too much of these. I just want it to echo the copper. There we go. Okay, and then you're going to grab a large brush. Well, it doesn't have to be large, you can use any brush. And go and start by tapping down on the surface. Don't brush it first. By tapping, you're going to keep those powders roughly in their correct spots and stick them down onto the clay. Then, once that's kind of been established, then go in and really give it a good old burnish. And this is going to stick that powder down and blend things together and also semi-highlight the surface of your texture. And I highly recommend really going in and rubbing around like this, burnishing, because this is both sticking it down so you don't have to worry about the sealer as much later on, but also this is what highlights that texture. Okay, and that should just about do. And just be careful on these edges because as you can see it will lift up quite easily. Alright, and there we go. Okay, and let me just bring both of those pieces over because they can join back together now. There we go, that's how that looks. And I'm going to just slot them back together and see how it looks. If you want to, you could also actually put a piece of clay in between these two pieces to kind of create a border effect if you wanted. And I'm just gonna have a look at that and see if I like how it looks. I do actually quite like that. Now, it does need a backing piece, so I'm going to actually roughly cut out what I need from this and then use the leftover clay that I've got around here, because I am going to have leftovers, to form the backing piece. Okay, and I'm going to be using this convex spearhead cutter, and this is roughly where I want to be cutting it out. So I'm going to place that down without actually cutting anything out. And I am going to trim around it, leaving a decent amount of space on either side, because if I want to move things around, I like to have some of that space left. And just trim and trim, and over there as well. This I am going to keep because I want to create a bale, and this is going to get formed into leftover clay. So I'm just going to form that together, run that through the pasta machine a couple of times to mix it together. And I might actually just trim a little bit off from here, because I'm not going to end up using the edges, but leave just enough for me to make a bale from it. And then mix that together. Okay, and it should come out looking like this. I haven't mixed it through thoroughly. I've left the kind of patchy effect that you get from the pastels. And I'm going to take these pieces, and they aren't stuck together, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to place those two pieces down so that they still meet together smoothly. And just make sure that all of the gaps are closed as best you can. And that's going to hold everything together. And then with the flat of your palm, you're just very gently going to press down. And this won't flatten the texture, it will just apply enough pressure to stick it down onto the back. You don't want to be pressing with your fingers, because that does apply fairly direct pressure, and I find that it ends up flattening the texture too much. There we go, you can see how that looks. And let me bring over a piece of paper, place that down, and it is going to stick in my cutter, but I'm placing it down here because then my back will keep a relatively smooth finish. Okay, and I'm going to grab my convex spearhead, and this is the largest one in my set. There will be a link in the description below to that if you're interested. But I'm going to just take that and line it up to the point where I like what I have. And you need to spend time doing this because you want the movement to be correct. And I think I'm going to cut it out over here. Then just press down nice and even, like so. Lift up the outside, put that to the side, and there we go. There's your piece, and you can see how nice that looks. Very beachy. And I'm just going to smooth along the edges. I always do that. Okay, and you can see how the back looks. And I'm just going to pop that to the side, and I'm going to work on our bale. And for that, you're going to bring over this piece again, and I think the clay is a little too thick. And so to fix that, I'm actually going to flatten this out. I'll use a roller to do that, and very gently flatten in one direction, flip, flatten in the other direction, and you should maintain the pattern. It's just that the texture is not going to be as pronounced. And you could do this for the opposite side of your piece as well, so you have one side that is textured and one side that is not if you wanted to. Just something to keep in mind. There we go, and let me just show you how that looks. Really quite nice. Pop that down, and I'm going to be using one of these little surfboard cutters because I can fold that to create my bale. And I'm just finding a spot that I like. I think this is a good spot here. And just press down lift up, and let me just put that aside. I'm going to bring over a little metal mandrel. You could use a metal straw as well. And I'm going to take this piece, and I actually should use my blade to pick that up, like so. And then again, just run your fingers along the edge to remove any fluff that is left, like so. Take that mandrel, position your piece so that it's in the middle, and then fold it over using that as a base, and get the piece to stick, like so, just along the bottom there. And just fuss with it to make it so that it looks nice. And this is going to be a bail, and I'm using the mandrel here just as a way to hold it and to form that top shape. But you could use any kind of round shape. You could actually use a pen or a pencil, and then you're going to just take that, slip that out from there, and there you go, you've got yourself a bail. Then let me just bring that other piece over. There we go. And I should actually flip this because it's got some residue. There we go. And there we go. And that is how it's going to hang once it's been baked and finished up. So just make sure that everything looks correct and that you're happy with it. That point's a little too sharp for my liking, so I'm going to just go and dull it out a bit. And there, you can just see how everything lines up, and if you're happy with it, this is going to bake now for an hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And once it is done, we're going to give it a little bit of a seal to protect the powders that we've put on it, and then we can finish it. Okay, and here is how it should look out of the oven. Now I do need to sand the back and edges just to clean it up, because we've got a few fingerprints from the powders there, and also just some unruly edges. The front I'm quite happy with, and all that needs to be done there is some sealing. This one also needs to have a bit of sanding along the edges, but the front and back are perfectly fine. So I'll put that to the side. This is some wet sandpaper. It is a 800 grit, though you can use a lower grit if you want to. I'd recommend sanding in a sink of water or a bowl of water. I have that off to the side, but you want to make sure that this is wet. And then you're just going to sand the edges and the back. Avoid sanding the front because that will remove your powders. Though I am half tempted, I must say, to kind of highlight that white. I'll think about it. But you're just going to sand the edges, and I just want to do the one edge. And let's see, that's pretty much sanded, and you can just see the comparison there. It's just going to tidy things up and make it a little neater upon finishing. You also want to do the same for the back. And then this one, you're mainly just going to be focusing along the sides as well. And I'll just do it with the one grit, and then from there it's going to get varnished. Okay, and here is how that looks once I've sanded it. You can see the edges are nice and bright. The back, the camera's probably not going to pick up much, but to the touch it's really nice and smooth, and the image is actually quite a bit clearer. I decided not to sand the front at all. Then this is how this one looks. You can see that that's come out nice and clean along the edges. Just a nicer finish overall. And it doesn't take all that long. Right, now let me just put these to the side. Okay, and this is the varnish that I am using. It is Varnishing gloss varnish, though it's not the only gloss varnish that you can use. It's the one I recommend because it's the one that I have used, but feel free to use any gloss, matte or semi-gloss varnish you want. And what I'm going to do is this one I am going to dip because it's a shape that can't really lie flat. So I'm just going to take a wire so that I can suspend it. Just dip that in the varnish, and I'll actually just hold it there for a moment or two just to let the excess varnish really drain off. then I'm going to just pop that so that it can sit on the edge of the tin like that. And then I'll leave it for about 5 minutes, and during that 5 minutes I will use a baby wipe or anything along those lines to just tap the bottom to collect the excess varnish drips so that you don't end up with a drip drying there. And then for this piece, I really only want to varnish the front where the pastels and mica powder are sitting. So I'm just going to use a brush and I'm just soaking that in some varnish, and then I'll go over and I am going to actually tap the varnish onto the surface. That way I make sure that it soaks into the grooves of the pattern. So just soak it again and go and just press it into the texture. And this is something I like to do for textured pieces, because if you brush, I find that it introduces a lot more air bubbles than if you do it this way. If you have bubbles showing up on the surface, you can always just give it a quick blow to remove those bubbles, but this is a good way to get a even coat. Alright, then that should remove a lot of them. Okay, and then this is going to sit and dry along with that other piece. Generally it takes about half an hour to dry fully, sometimes a little longer or a little less depending on your environment. So just allow it to dry to the touch, and then we can move on to the assembly process. Okay, and here is how it should look once that varnish has dried. And it will have a nice sheen to it now, while also protecting the powders on the surface. Right, now the next step is going to be to drill our hole so that we can attach the bail and the piece together. So I've got a handheld drill over here, or a handheld pin drill, and all you're going to do is you're just going to pop that hole in, and sometimes it can be a little difficult when there is texture like this, so I've made a mark for where it needs to go. So just bear with me for a moment. I need to come in at an angle, and then I can proceed to drill down. And that should only take a couple of seconds. It should be already through. So that's nice and easy. And then you're going to do the same thing for this. You're just going to drill right near the top, like so. And then we can pop those two pieces together. Right, there we go, and that should just about do it. It's just about through, not quite for this one. There we go. So it shouldn't take you long to do this. There we go, and you could use a motorized drill as well if you prefer. Okay. And then I'm going to be using an antique copper jump ring, and I'll just open that up, slip that through one of the holes, like so. Okay, then I'm going to grab this and pop the jump ring through there as well. Sometimes that can be a little fiddly. So just bear with me for a moment while I get that through. There we go. Sometimes it's a little bit of a weird angle. So once you get that going through, it should be smooth sailing from there. There we go. And then I will rotate that around so that the join for the jump ring is positioned inside the bead, because I prefer that not to show. There we go, that's the bail and piece attached. Then from there you can use any cord you want. I am going to be using this really nice kind of grey-blue sari ribbon that I have lying around. I have finished off the one end already, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. But I've just taken 3 pieces of cord and attached them together. Again, feel free to use whatever cord you find works with your piece. I really like the organicness of the sari ribbon, so that's why I've gone with it. You could also plait it if you want, but I'm going to leave it kind of hanging open like this. Then you're going to take those ends and just line them up so that they're kind of folded over one another. And I'm just going to pull to make sure everything is nice and straight. Then I have a antique copper ribbon end, and I will pop that on the end, give it a quick squish so that it holds everything, and then give it a really hard squish, and then just hold that and give it a pull to make sure that everything's held correctly. And then I will trim this off. If you want, you could use some glue on the cords beforehand, and that can prevent any fraying, and it can hold things together a little more. After I've done this, I probably will go in and just touch up the edges just so that they don't fray on me, but you don't need to show that here. Then I've got another little jump ring. This one's a bit smaller because I don't need it to be as big. Pop that through the cord end. I have the other end of the toggle clasp. Close that jump ring, and that is just about it. Nice and simple for the necklace, because I think the pendant already does quite a bit, so I don't like to overcomplicate it if it's not necessary. And there we go. That is just about it. I'm quite happy with how that turned out. There, let me show you how that looks. But yeah, it's quite a nice organic beachwear piece. Bear in mind that the techniques that I've shown can be mixed and matched. Like for instance, these veneers could be made into earrings. This on its own could be an earring if you want. You could flatten out this part to look like this. You could also, again, you could make earrings, you could make pendants, you could make just about anything you want. Bear in mind this bail technique could be used across different pendants or even incorporated into earrings, though you might want to make it a little smaller. So feel free to take the techniques that I've shown in today's video and remold them into something that suits your tastes if there are things that you would like to change. But yeah, that is just about it. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please do consider becoming a member. There is a join button just below this video. There's also a link to my Patreon account where you can become a patron. It's both the same across the YouTube membership and the Patreon membership. They're both great ways to support the channel and view some exclusive videos that aren't available on YouTube. Another way to support the channel is to check out my Etsy store, Jessima Design. There is a link in the description below to there as well, where I sell things such as the cutters and the blade that I used in today's video. So that would be greatly appreciated if you would check that out. But yeah, that is just about it. I do hope you enjoyed. I certainly did. And I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.